All right. All right, let's get comfortable. We at home. Kick the shoes off. Who made something to eat? Anybody got something to eat? All right. Oh, I love it when we can get together like this, huh? Did Sasungiji make it? You didn't get a chance to make it? Yeah, you all know about that, right? About his father-in-law. His father-in-law passed. You didn't read the emails?
Not today.
Acha. All right.
I didn't send it.
Oh, you didn't send it?
You told me what to do.
Oh, okay. All right, I didn't know. I didn't know what it was.
No.
That's why we didn't know.
All right. What is Dr. David doing? Zuzu really changed you. Huh? Yeah, Zuzu bring her to Sasong more than... That is so good. Are you comfortable back there?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Lay Zuzu on the gadi. Huh? Lay him on the gadi. Let him
I'm glad you
rest.
said that because by right you probably wouldn't.
You did the right thing. So I'm not gonna. You see, you did the right thing. All right. And so these are at-home talks, huh? And of course, the ideal is to use these occasions to refine and define your practice. That's the also the function of your Kula meeting is to refine and define your practice. After all, everything that pertains to success on the path is grounded in practice. You see, it's practice. You must practice and practice and practice. You see. It is practice that deepens your understanding. You see, those who know that, well, my understanding is still lacking, well, the way to correct that is not through more reading books, it's through more practice that you increase your understanding. Not by reading more books, not by, churning your brain more. It is through practice that you deepen understanding. You will notice that in the biographies of these great saints and mystics, these were not guys with PhD. You see my point? They were not scholars. They had not studied depth psychology and all of this at all, you see. Great sages like Ramakrishna Maharaj, perfectly illiterate, you see, but brilliant, you see. You can't account for their genius on the basis of what they've studied. Their genius has nothing to do with studying, per se, in the traditional sense of the word, like all that thinking and trying to figure it out and pondering intellectually, and that was not how they achieved their genius. Their genius is derived strictly from practice. So if you want to become a genius, then practice. You want to increase your understanding? Practice. Everything comes from practice. The practice, Maharaj used to say, is the panacea to solve all problems. You got a problem? Your practice is the answer. Your practice will take you to that level of clarity of mind where you can see your solution. You see, it's a problem only because you have no solution. And it remains a problem until you find a solution. But to have that solution to your problem, you must go into the depths of your being. Long as you're searching for it at the level of the mind, you're just going to get confused. That's how you get double-minded, you see. Double-mindedness is the outcome of the search for solutions at the level of the mind. You will always be double-minded because you are operating at the level of the mind, you see. So practice is ultimately what it's all about. So when we have these moments to get together like this, then I'd like to turn our attention to practice. Would that be all right with you all? And we'll do a little other things as well, but fundamentally we're here to help one another deepen our practice. And I thought that to do that, I would share with you some of the wisdom embodied in the Vijnana Bevarava Tantra. I mentioned that briefly to you Sunday. A couple of things about it. The teachings on enlightenment that was given to Shakti by her consort Shiva. Of course, there's not much that we can say in an open context, but here when we're at home, we can talk a little bit more about it. So we'll do that. Would that be okay? So first I'll read you the sutra. And this is a particular sutra that I love. I came across the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra or Sutra back in I think 1982 or something like that. And I fell in love with that. I think of all of the scriptures that I've read over the course of my life, that's got to be right up there number one. Because the whole sutras, all of those sutras is about practice. You know, the Vijnana Bhairava Tantras are collections of techniques. By practicing, one is able to move into the depths of one being. In fact, it is an encyclopedia of sadhana. And over the course of my life, I've been able to trace almost every form of sadhana back to those fundamental sets of techniques outlined by Shiva for his beloved Shakti. You see. So it's a tremendous contribution that our African ancestors there in the Indus Kush Valley has made for all of those who will come after them, that too would be in search of self-realization. But this, as I was saying, this particular sutra, this particular tantra that we're going to talk about tonight is one that I think I love the most. There's a few other ones in there. But I was particularly drawn to this one because it resonated with something deep inside of me. It was consistent, I suppose, with my own samskaras, you see, tendencies that carried over from a previous life. Because a lot of us have been on the path before. So for some of you rascals, you know, this is not the first time around. You see, you've been on a path. Maybe not this particular path, but on some path. And have been engaged in some practices, you see, so forth and so on. And this particular sutra really resonated with me. I'm hoping that it may resonate with some of you as well. If not, not to worry. The plan is that perhaps each month, if we have that kind of grace, we'll get together like this and we'll look at some of these wonderful aids to sadhana that makes up the contents of the Vijnana Bhairava Sutras. Would that be all right? So first I'll read the sutra. In rain, during a black night, enter that blackness as the form of forms. Before we dissect the sutra, many things have to be understood. And the first thing that has to be understood is the nature of blackness. In rain, during a black night, enter into that blackness as form of forms. It is telling us something about blackness, darkness. Mahadeva in the sutra is explaining to Chakti the secret of darkness, of blackness, what it is. You see, most of us are afraid of the dark. Have you noticed? You see. And that's understandable if we look at it from a kind of anthropological or Darwinian point of view, as man evolved, or in prehistoric times, in ancient times, living in darkness was dangerous, you see. In darkness, all kinds of things can happen to you. Animals are there, you can't see. So hence, you know, there was a lot of fear of darkness at one point in our evolution, and for justifiable reasons, because in the darkness of the night, who knows what is lurking? So mankind, at some point, after he had lost this ability to see in the dark, this is the one thing more you have to understand. You see, prior to our becoming afraid of the dark, there was a time when we, like animals today, could see in the dark. Hence, there was no fear of the darkness. Every ability that you see in any of the lower forms of life we possess too, because this is the top of forms in the creation. We have all of the faculties that you will find in any lower species of life. Whether they have been activated or not is another matter, but surely at a earlier point in our origin, there was this capacity to see in the dark, and then that was lost, you see. And on the loss of this ability to see in the darkness, we became afraid of the darkness, of blackness. Blackness began to be associated with something negative. Does that make sense to you? That is why with the discovery of fire, fire became such a symbol of the sacred, you know. Even in the Vedic rituals, there's a fire ritual. Fire became something that men worship, because this fire lit up the darkness of the night and allowed them to see and therefore be able to protect themselves against those dangers that were lurking in the darkness, you see. So, of course, over millennia, we have associated blackness and darkness with danger. Mahadeva is explaining to Chakti that this very blackness is the source of everything. Everything that has come into being has come out of this darkness, this blackness. Darkness is more fundamental than light. Now, historically, there have been a few spiritual traditions that have retained this understanding of darkness. The Essenes, for instance, one of the spiritual community that purportedly Jesus Christ belonged to. The Essenes, in their creation mythology, talks about the darkness that was upon, you know, the earth or the world. And out of that darkness, there came light. Let there be light. But before there was light, there was something else. Light itself comes out of something. That thing that light itself comes out of is this darkness, this blackness, this infinite, absolute state of things, you see. It is the womb out of which everything and everyone has come, you see. That is why in many spiritual traditions, even to the day, the symbolism of the state out of which everything has arisen is always depicted black. You see, the Shivalonga and the Yoni is black, the black Madonna, Kalika, the mother force out of which everything comes. Kali is black, you know. The very word Kali means black, dark. Again, the symbolism is purpose to help you understand that everything has come out of this deep, infinite, intense blackness. You see. This is the noon of ancient Kemet, you see. Even the goddess Nut, the sky, darkness. Everything has come out of that. So in order to practice this auxiliary technology, one has to have a different understanding of darkness, of pitch darkness, of blackness, you see. So if you're afraid of the dark, you may want to leave now. It's going to get black up in here. And most people are afraid of the dark. They never look into the dark. You see, when the lights go out, they close their eyes and go to sleep. You see, they never look into the darkness. They never develop a kind of fearlessness of the darkness. So this technique that Mahadeva is giving Shakti is based on this wisdom of the divine nature of blackness, darkness. Apart from and aside from the spiritual aspect of this entering into the blackness, you see, there are also psychophysical benefits as well, you see. So for those of you who sleep too much or sleep too little, this exercise will help you much. It also is useful for those who have depression, you see. Because as you enter into this darkness, your thought slows down. Because looking into the darkness, there's nothing to see. Therefore, there's nothing to think about. Thinking slows down. And with that slowing down of thoughts per minute, there is also a drop in your depression, etc. Fatigue and chronic fatigue syndrome, this too will be helped by this particular practice. So apart from the spiritual benefits, there are also physical and psychological benefits from this practice as well. And of course, we'll have time to talk about that a little bit tonight as well. In ancient times, you see, on a rainy, cloudless night, the technique says, enter into the blackness of that night. Just look into the blackness of it. You will look up into that blackness, you see, and enter that blackness, and let that blackness enter into you, you see. Because this is the condition that you were in your womb of your mother, you see. In the womb of the mother, there's darkness, there's no light there, you see. And that is what makes it so oceanic, you see. That's what makes it so comforting. So when you enter into that blackness, into that darkness, the experience, the felt experience, the relaxation that comes is similar to that existed in your own mother's womb. You see? It's very comforting, very relaxing, very peaceful, very still. You see? But you will only enter into that blackness if you are not afraid of it, if you understand rightly what it is. It is your source. You have come out of that, literally. Everybody in here has come out of some woman's womb. You have come out of darkness. And your whole life you spend trying to recreate the kind of felt experience that you had in your mother's womb. This is what the Freudians talk about, the oceanic bliss. That is what we are searching for unconsciously, to re-enter our mother's womb, to re-enter to that darkness, darkness, you see. Now, I've always have loved that. Even long before I came across this sutra, I can recall even as a boy, I always loved rainy nights, cloudy nights. And I can recall even as a kid, I would almost instinctively gravitate to somewhere quiet, dark, and sit. Sometime it would be in a closet, you know what I mean? Sometime a cardboard box, sometime under the bed somewhere. But I would always find some place to sit and get quiet and enter into that darkness. Of course, I did not understand, could not account for it, but all I knew is that, you know, there was something magic on these rainy, moonless nights and darkness, just being quiet. And of course, as more kids came into the family, it became more and more difficult you know, to have quiet, you see. But nevertheless, you see. So you can imagine, you know, years later when I came across this sutra, why it resonates with me. Because by the time I encountered this sutra, I had already lived some of the truth of that. Some of the truth of that. And so for me, it was a great source of inspiration and motivation, and a tremendous aid on this path, you see. But if you were a child and you was afraid of the dark, then this technique will perhaps be a little difficult in the beginning. Because sitting in the darkness, you see, all kind of fears will come up in you. You know what I mean? That's why many are, when you leave a light on in the room, because you want to see what's making that damn sound. You see, you leave a little light on because if you hear something and you can't identify, you want to be able to see in that darkness to protect yourself, because you will be afraid otherwise. So, sitting in that blackness, you see, you will be confronted with your fears. Good, you see. Because these fears have to be dealt with. So all kinds of things will come up in those moments. Yes, true. And how much will come up will be based on how deep your fear of darkness is. How afraid you are of blackness. You would never think that black people were afraid of blackness, but it is so. It is so. So, Mahadeva is saying, in rain during a black night, enter that blackness as the form of forms. Enter into that blackness with the understanding that everything that has come into existence has come out of this darkness. Darkness, blackness is more fundamental than light. You see. Light comes and goes. You see, darkness is always there. It is the mother. It is the womb out of which everything has arisen, and into which everything returns. It is the ground of being. Now, as if almost anticipating modernity, Mahadeva goes on with this sutra, because the problem for us, you see, where to find such absolute darkness. On a rainy, moonless night, you can't really look up here because there's so much artificial light here. You see, street lights, car lights. I mean, so you never get a chance to really experience that kind of silence and stillness that existed for those practitioners living during the time that these sutras was written, into whom these sutras were aimed. The Dogon people in West Africa are renowned for understanding the spiritual significance of darkness, you see. In fact, it was their ability to go deep into their caves, into this pitch blackness, where they developed the ability to see in the dark, and thus could look up in the sky and see a Sirius B star, a dog star, when you could not even see it with a telescope, you see. They developed the capacity, they recovered the capacity to see in the darkness of the night sky with such precision, you know what I mean, that they were able to outline the movements of the planets, you see, with precise measurements. And it is well known that all serious practitioners at some point in ancient time will flee to the caves in the Himalayas. And they will go into the caves, far, far into the depth of the caves, till they could encounter this intense, absolute darkness, incident. Enter into that blackness. Because, you see, there was not available in the environment, perhaps, you see. Maybe the moon was shining that night and so forth. So you will find that this practice of entering into the blackness, the darkness, the womb, prevails in many, many spiritual traditions. And even in modern Ethiopia, among those Christian monks, there are monks in Ethiopia. Ethiopia has a kind of Tibet under culture there. You never read about it, you see. For there are still men and few women who are living a very monastic way of life, a kind of renunciation, and they still go in caves. Part of the preparation, you see, for certain monks to go to different levels is based on how long they have spent secluded in these dark caves. Even in Tibet, the retreats, they'll build you a little hut and you go in for 3 months, you know, or 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, and so forth, you know, just secluded, away from all of it. All of that, again, you see, beloved, is understood by understanding the spiritual nature of blackness, the spiritual truth about darkness as being the womb out of which everything and everyone come. So any questions about that thus far? Because this has to be understood. It is very important because we're gonna do a little practice tonight here, where you'll get a chance to see what I'm talking about. But I wanted to preface our practice tonight by helping you change how you have been seeing darkness, you see. So a lot of you who are practicing with your candles on and your lights on, no, stop that. You're only doing that because you're afraid of the dark. So don't do that. You want to see if there's something really crawling on you or not. You see, that's your fear, you see. It is prehistoric, it is ancient, it is deep down in you. You follow what I'm saying? And you must go past all of that. If you can sit with this darkness, you ultimately become fearless. This is how you become fearless, you see, by moving into this darkness. So you have to have a little bit of a different understanding about darkness, about blackness. Now, anticipating our conditions thousands of years later, Mahadeva extended the sutra, and he says, when a moonless rainy night is not present, close eyes and find blackness before you. When a moonless rainy night is not present, close eyes and find blackness before you. See, and enter into that darkness. Now you begin to see the relationship of this sutra, this tantra, to our very way of practicing. Entering into this blackness is to enter into the eye center. That is the eye center. The blackness, the darkness that Mahadeva says we should enter, that is the place where you do your meditation. You must enter into that blackness. And once entered into that blackness, that's what you do Simran. That's what you do Bhagwan. You see? Just like you've entered into this room, and now this is where we're having a talk. In the same way you enter into that blackness, and once entered into that blackness, that's where you do Simran and Bhagwan. You see? Because it's not possible to find such darkness outside anymore. You see? So you close eyes and enter into that blackness. Now, if you close your eyes here, your blackness that you enter to will be artificial. It's diminished by these lights. That's not the blackness then that Mahadeva is talking about. You see? That's a false blackness. So lights must be out. You see? You must try to create as much absolute blackness as possible. You gotta really become black, okay? I know you're afraid, but you know, this is what Scripture says. You know, if you don't like the blackness, you can't become enlightened. It's that simple. When a rainy, moonless night is not present, close eyes, find the blackness before you, and enter it. You will also be reminded that not only for the part of our practice that is Simran, we are instructed to enter into this blackness, but also for Bhagwan. And in Bhagwan, what is even more striking and more consistent with this metaphor of darkness being our womb is the very posture that you take in Bhagwan. That posture itself has great mystical significance because it is an approximation of the fetal position that you were in the womb. And so what Swamiji Maharaj and those mystics were doing was the recreation of the experience had in your mother's womb in that darkness. So even with Bhagwan, you see, you are to remain in that darkness, you see, in that posture. And listen for the sound, because there's sound in the darkness. The sound, the Shabbat comes out of the darkness. It's just like you see Zuzu is there. He's listening to her heartbeat. You see, the further she puts him away from her heartbeat, where he can't hear it, the more distorted it becomes, you see. So nature, to take care of that, you see, wires a woman, you see, in such a way that she wants to automatically keep that baby. Her love pulls that baby to her. She don't ever want to put the damn baby down. Don't want him to hold the baby. Have you held Zuzu yet? Let him hold Zuzu sometimes. See, but that's wired in you, you see? Right there, you see? And you will lay him right over your heart. It's called the left arm position. And there he will hear your heart. It's a beautiful thing, you see. So all throughout creation, you see the validation of these wonderful insights that Shiva is giving this beloved Shakti for the sake of her becoming enlightened, you see. Beautiful. So when you do your bhajan, you see, again, you know, in that posture, you are creating the peace that was experienced in the womb, the dark womb of your mother. The point I'm trying to stress here is that this darkness and entering into this darkness, this blackness, is the heart of this way of practice. And what is required now is you're learning how to be in this darkness, how to enter into this darkness. So we will have a little bit of time here tonight where we're going to do that. Just to finish up this sutra, we'll come back to this to explore it. There's one more step. You remember the first step was in rain during a black night. Enter that blackness as the form of all forms, step one. But sometimes such a black night is not available, then step two, right? When a rainy, moonless night is not present, close eyes. Close eyes. Find blackness before you and enter into that blackness. Step two. Step three, opening eyes. See blackness. Thus false disappears forever. Beautiful. Once you have let the darkness enter you, deeply entered you, open eyes, see darkness, and thus your faults disappear forever. Because in that darkness, there's such silence, there's such peace, there's such calmness. And if you can maintain that experience of being in the dark with eyes wide open, then that calmness pervades you. Now, you see, you're centered. You're in a place where you're not disturbed. You are at rest. Even when all about you is going berserk, you are not berserk. You're in a place. And remember, in that darkness, thoughts per minute drops. So with eyes open, seeing blackness, you maintain that low level of TPM. The color of no mindness is black. Please make a note. It gives you great control now. Whenever you want to come out of your mind, you just see the blackness and you're out of your mind in that moment, above it. Thoughts slowed. Now that's a little bit more advanced, you see. But it is this one sutra above all sutras in this Vijana Beravatutra, that most resemble our way of practice. So what we will do here for a minute is to, we'll take the lights down. Or do you want to have some questions before we practice? Sure.
The word that you said after thus, something disappears forever.
False.
False.
Your false disappears.
Thoughts.
False.
False.
F-A-U-L-T-S.
Your false.
F-A-U-L-T-S.
F-A-U-L-T-S.
Oh, false.
False.
Oh.
Weaknesses, false.
False.
Imperfection, shortcomings. You see, mistaken behavior. Because you're angry, right?
Right.
You can't be angry when you enter into that blackness. At all. When you enter into the blackness fully, you have entered into the same condition that you fundamentally enter into every night in Susupti, except you are awake. Just as in Susupti, you're not aware of your emotions. They're not impacted on you. You follow what I'm saying? You are transcendent in that condition that is Susupti. Entering into that blackness while maintaining wakefulness is Turiya, is the fourth state. There's the waking state, the dreaming state, Susupti, and the fourth state, Turiya. Turiya is entering into this Susupti-like third condition with wakefulness. And it therefore has all of the same qualities of experience that you will have in Susupti. In that state, there is no identification with your emotions and all of that other stuff. Is that about right? Nothing is arising. With eyes open, enter into that blackness. And false disappears. All of your reactivity disappears because you're calm. You see, you only overreact somebody say something to you, and instantly you're assaulted. Instantly you respond out of that insult. Is that about right? Instantly, because you are not in a state of calmness in the first place. Please make a note of that. You are responding because you are not centered. That's why you're responding. It's reactivity in you, isn't it? It's almost instantaneous. Somebody looks at you funny, says something, don't do what you like, and instantly you are having a reaction, an emotional reaction, because you are not centered. You see? Buddha, you spit in his face, he just wipes it.
Something else is
Because he's centered. You see my point? You won't hear all of that, fuck you motherfucker coming from you. Somebody say something to you, well, fuck you! Slam! Is that about right? It's a reaction because you're not nowhere calm. You're not calm. You're not cool. You see? Staying rooted in the blackness, you remain cool, calm, collected. You see? It's just like if you're deep sleep, but after just sleep, deeply rested in his Susupti condition. And I'm standing on and say, you black motherfucker, I hate you, kiss my ass. Is there going to be any reaction?
No.
No. Because he's somewhere else. It's like that. But when you are not somewhere else, there you are. These kind of faults in sila, faults in behavior, disappears. course, much deeper than that. Tonight, I'm just saying a few things here and there about it. Trying to make some kind of connection today with these great teachings and techniques given thousands of years ago to Shakti by Shiva for the sake of her becoming enlightened. He showed her 112 things that she could do, and just pick any one of them, beloved, and you will become enlightened. You see? Just like the Raja built the Taj Mahal for his beloved out of his great love. You see? So it was that Shiva generated the Vijayana Bhairavat Sutras out of his love for Shakti, and gets to give her something much more grander than a Taj Mahal. And they are really beautiful. They really are. Encountering this book for the first time, I regretted never learning Sanskrit, because there's no way to really savor the beauty of a thing if you don't know the language. But even in its translations, you could still smell the aroma, the fragrance of the kind of love, you see, that these great teachings are grounded in. So what I want you to do now is, so I said, David, you're the farthest from us, so you know how to cut these lights off? If someone else over there?
You want me to, let me know when you want me to stop.
Yeah, you can cut those off now. The ones in the kitchen. Even if you have to, put some towels to filter out the light and things of that nature. Because you want that darkness to be just as natural as possible. Sometimes you cover your head, there's some distraction, slight distraction. You want it to be a room that's dark where there's no light seeping in, because then your peripheral will pick that up, you follow me? And you'll be distracted by it, you see. So you don't want no distractions, you see. That's the advantage and beauty of entering into that blackness, is because there's no distractions. And it's easier for the mind and thinking to slow up. So is there any place in the house that you can make absolutely dark? Do you have windows in your bathroom? Yeah, I love my bathroom. I don't know about that. Because there's no windows in my down washroom, and I can just close the door. You see, take a towel and put it through the crack so there's no floodlight, coming in, and just sit there. I could literally sit in my washroom all night long. In fact, that's one of Joyce's peeves. She thinks it's something medically wrong with me, But I just love. And as I said before, for me, this was easy to incorporate. It was easy for me to resonate with that, because it's some scholar in me. It's an impression. It's something I must have done this before. Comes very easy, very naturally. I just love it. Where were we at Sarani a few years ago on some school? Remember on that rainy night?
Yeah.
But you were there, right? Wasn't that delicious?
And the power went out.
The power went out. Thank God. And we just sat quietly, didn't we? In the darkness. There was a little light filtering in, but we just sat there quietly and hearing that rain. And that's a memorable thing. So even today you remember that, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just something beautiful about that. Yes, Mahadasi?
The natural reaction of the eyes is to automatically blink, so should we just
Try to
not
resist
blink
that.
until the tears run?
Yeah, let them run. Yeah, let the tears run. You see, because at first the eyes will burn, because it's not used to that. It's just not used to that, and that's all right, So That's just a beginning stage. So that's a little discomfort. Just keep them, you know, you don't want to strain them. Don't sit there buck-eyed. You know what I mean? Just you know, relaxed. Even eyes half closed is good. You see. And you're just staring into the darkness. You're looking into the darkness. You see, you're seeing into the darkness. And as that darkness enters into you, just as you enter into it, it enters into you, you see. And it's like smoke get in your eyes, black get in your eyes, you see. And it burns a little bit at first because you're not used to that. But see, that's energy. See, that blackness, that's not a void. That's energy. That's the absolute state of energy, undifferentiated, you see. Unmanifest. It's energy. So you must understand that this profound darkness, this nun, is not empty. How could it be empty? Everything comes out of it, which means it is pregnant, it is full, it is energy. And you feel that as you enter into it. As it enters into you, you feel it. And if you could sit real still, two things. One, you want absolute darkness to the best of your ability. Number two, you want to be still. You don't want to be wiggling around. You don't want to be all over the place. You see. So it's very important that for that 30 or 45 minutes, that whichever you're going to devote to this training, you be still. Yes, beloved? I think 3 months is good, but I would like you at least to do it for 30 days, because 30 days you'll be able to get a sense of what it feels like to sit at the eye center. You're able to identify the place, the condition, the context for your formal practice. That's the whole point, you see. So it need not become an obsession with you, but nevertheless, I want you to take advantage of this here. And I said 3 months because if you do it 3 months, you'll get those added therapeutic benefits, you see. It'll start correcting your insomnia or your tendency to fall asleep, you see, too much. It'll start correcting your depression because you'll be sitting quiet and the TPM will start dropping. And so you're not thinking so much about your problems, and thus you are becoming less and less depressed. Can't be depressed unless you are thinking too much. You see, depression is the outcome of overthinking. And as your thoughts per minute drops, and it will drop, then so does the depression. So in 3 months, you'll start getting there, you see. Your chronic fatigue, you see, tiredness all the time. You see. Because when you enter the darkness, that's energy. You're rejuvenated. Nature pushes you into that darkness every day to rejuvenate you. That's how the physical body gets rejuvenated. It's in susupti. Hence, when people are not able to have deep, dreamless sleep, they're always tired. The quality of your waking state is directly related to the quality of your deep sleep. If you're not getting deep sleep, even when you're awake, you will not be able to function at your maximum capacity because you will lack the energy for it. You will always feel sluggish and tired. And that is because you have not fallen into susupti frequently enough, you see. You're spending a lot of your nights dreaming. Because dreaming, fantasizing, is a way to avoid entering into the darkness. You see. So in 3 months, you see, you'll begin to reap those benefits. Now, after a while, perhaps, it'll just become nature, second nature to you. Just second nature. because it feels good. You know what I mean? It just flat out feels good, physically, emotionally, mentally. It just feels good. It is rest. Just sitting in the darkness, awake. And because of that simple practice, now you know what you are to do at the formal time of your practice. And then you see, you will, instead of spending an additional time sitting quietly in your washroom, you'll be spending that additional time sitting in your meditation because it's the same experience. You follow me? Sitting with eyes closed at the time of my formal practice begins to feel just like that. You follow me? So one sits longer. Your formal practice is no longer a kind of ritual. You follow me? It becomes an enjoyment. You see? Not merely something you have to do, something you want to do. So this is the thing. So 3 months will help you. Something else to say about it? Yes, sir.
I think, well, like the original, outside of the eyes burning, it was, to me, it was a little bit easier to get into the darkness with my eyes open. And once I close my eyes, it's like the mind start running in and start to get some level of visualization.
Yes, and that's because you haven't, this is just the first time out. That's why I said with the next 30 days or so, you'll become more and more accustomed. Because most people don't know how to stop seeing outside, even when they close their eyes. You're seeing, you're knitted, the visualization, what you're visualizing is past or future. So your knitted is constantly seeing something other than the darkness because it's not been trained. That's why I say that when you close your eyes, you never want to be in the darkness. So you would rather see what you did today. Let me see what I need to do tomorrow. Let me see what I did 10 years. You're trying to see all other kinds of things, but not that darkness because you're afraid. It's at a deep level. So the open eye practice is just to get you out of that old, ingrained, prehistoric habit of avoiding darkness, avoiding blackness. See? Being comfortable in blackness. Looking into it rather than looking into your past and into your future, which is normally what you do when you close your eyes. It's a habit. But as you get accustomed to just sitting, looking into this blackness, when that practice becomes mature, when it is conscious, deliberate, when it gets developed, when you close your eyes now, you see, you will have that habit too, of just looking into the darkness and not looking into your past and not looking into your future. You will simply look into the darkness. If you don't look into the darkness, then where else will your knitted go but into the past or the future? You see? And you bring it out and put it back, look into this darkness, into this present. See? The darkness, the blackness is the present. And so it is a wonderful technique, especially for those of us who have this kind of sadhana. As I said before, in the sutras, there's different techniques. But this is one that just really resonates for those of us who are doing scripture yoga. And especially the case with your budget, you see. Now, when you do your budget, you will find that your budgeting will feel more like this thing that we were just doing now. Because in budgeting, there is no similar. Similar is drop. And in budgeting, it is just this pure looking, engaging into the darkness, listening for the sound. And you'll start feeling a natural recognition. You'll recognize the context of budgeting just from doing this practice. It will feel very familiar now, you see. Because in budgeting, that's exactly what you're doing. You're just looking into the darkness. If you don't look into the darkness, you will fall into that, as I said before, that visualization, that dreaming state. That's dream. Whenever your eyes are closed and you visualize, technically you're dreaming. That is the dream state. And similarly, with eyes open, if you looking into that blackness, you see, that blackness will generate the calm because you're bringing that energy back into your awareness, you know. And you're gonna find, as some of you did find, how many of you start just really, when you didn't practice very long, say we had an hour, how many of you start really kind of slowly relaxing? See, some of you, just very slowly, just really relax. Because it really does feel good. I mean, it feels good at the level of the body. I mean, it really feels good. Anxiety starts dropping, stress starts dropping, your breathing slows down. You know what I mean? Muscles relax. That's the energy of darkness that you allow to come into you that does all of that. Because it's not just darkness, it's energy. You see? And you take it in. You see, Maharaji and all saints say that, for instance, 80% or 83%, they give a precise number. They say 83% of your attention goes out through the eyes. Which means you see, this darkness is inside of us too. Keep that in mind. You see, this melanin that we got, you know, that every human being has. Everybody got some darkness. It's more melanin in the brain than in your skin. There's melanated cells in the brain. You see? Black nucleus. And all of that. It's in you. You follow me? It is the source of energy. And so the saints say that when you let your attention go out, that's throwing your energy out. The energy that is in you is thrown out through the eyes. 83% of your energy in your body, mind, is thrown out through the eyes. 83. Another 14% of energy is thrown out through the ears. And the remaining few percentages is thrown out through the remaining senses. So, when you enter into the blackness, what you're doing, you are reversing the flow of that energy. You get back 83% of your psychic energy. It comes back in. Right? And if it's silent, if you can find a quiet, silent place, you'll recover another 14%. And if you be still, you won't feel nothing. You'll get 100% of your energy back. It'll come back. So this practice, for instance, of open eye, seeing the blackness, if you just see the blackness, then you're going to minimize how much of your attention, energy, gets pulled into other things. And then you have more energy. You follow me? So there's a real physics involved here. That is why you see Mahadeva says if when a rainy, moonless night is not present, close eyes. You see, find the blackness before the eyes and enter that, and you have the same thing. You see, the same recovery of attention and energy. attention is energy. Make sense? And it just calms you down. Now, you don't become a mope like Mahaji. This ain't gonna turn you into a Mahaji. Little Lawrence said, just moping around the damn house. But you will have a certain calmness about yourself. You know? A certain calmness about yourself. Even in the midst of a lot of activity, you know, you can. It's not like multitasking, you know. But you become capable of a great deal of activity. But something in you is very centered. You know, you don't get caught up in what you're doing, even though you're doing a lot. You just don't get caught up in it. You see. Which means you do it better. You follow me? So you'll tend to be able to accomplish a lot more. Because you don't get emotionally all of this caught up in it. You don't get identified with it.
So Master, the whole cycle that you took us through, we should do everything where we first started with eyes open, sitting in the darkness. Then we added Simran. Then we closed our eyes. We kept Simran going. And then we turn on the lights and then still look into the darkness. Right. We do that whole cycle.
No. I just did it tonight just to get you familiar with it. But no, when you go home, just sit for your half an hour, 45 minutes with your eyes open.
Okay.
All right? Now, if that happened to be the time before you do your formal practice, that's great, because you'll just move from there right into your formal practice, and it will benefit you more. Because you just, you know, it's like puja. You see, in India, in most culture, prior to your meditation, you do a kind of puja. Puja, although the word is translated as worship, but really puja is a preparation for worship. It's a kind of thing you do to prepare yourself for worship. Itself is not a worship. And so you do puja. This is a kind of puja. It's a kind of preparation that you do. There's many different kinds of puja that people might resort to prior to doing their formal practices. Sometimes they'll say, well, read a sutra and create a mood, you know what I mean? Or burn a piece of incense, or drink some rum and spray it all over the room. Snap a chicken neck, throw some crystals, you know what I mean? Go from the subtle to the ridiculous. These are pujas. Ceremonies, a kind of ritual act that you engage in for the sake of preparing yourself for the practice of that which is divine, sacred meditation. So this is a kind of puja, if you will. Although I must tell you honestly that these techniques that comprises the Vijnana Bhairava Sutras are more than just puja. They're more powerful than pujas. Any one of those 112 techniques can be fashioned into a bona fide sadhana, straight out, you know? But I am offering to you them to use kind of as a puja, to help you for your formal practice, not as a alternative to or a substitution for it, you see. So if in the morning time you can have a puja whereby you just sit quietly. You see, it's good because first you'll get to wake all the way up, and that'll go a long way of diminishing some of that sleep, you know, because you'll get used to being awake in the darkness. One of the reasons you go to sleep when you sit down and close your eye, because you're not accustomed to remaining awake in darkness. You're wired. As soon as it get dark, it's just natural. You see, some people you'll see, even if it's not even darkness, some people their triggers are quietness. Now I get too quiet, they fall. You see, Because either one can bring it. Hmm? So you have to get used to remaining awake even when there's no light for you to see and nothing for you to hear. And then you are able to really, you know, sit with a lot more focus. Yes, President.
I know at some point during that I wasn't able to distinguish. It was felt the same when my eyes were open as when my eyes were closed.
Yeah, yeah. You'll get to that kind of point, and you'll begin to see that this same darkness that is outside is inside. You recognize it, you see. Hmm?
Y'all had that same respect.
Yeah, and then you'll forget.
My eyes are open and closed.
Yeah, and then you'll forget about your eyes. That's the last part of the body to drop out of your awareness is your eyes. You forget about it because remember, 83% of your energy is going out of your eyes. The eyes are very important. You know, I mean, there's even a psychology that deals with moving the eyes. You know, eye movement, desensitization type of thing. So the eyes have to become still, forgotten about. You see, that's why you gaze. You don't move them because that movement of eyes side to side, up and down, and so forth. All of those have neurological connection, consequences. You know, you move them side to side a lot, you'll start fantasizing. So you look up into the left part of the brain, the person fantasizing, they're looking down to the right, they're doing something else, they're reminiscing. You know, our position is related to activities going on in your mind.
That's the NLP.
Mm-hmm. So what you do, you gaze straight. And so your eyes are not allowed to move and trigger those mental processes. That's why you gaze. You keep the eyes focused, rested, and you gaze. But if you're sitting there in your eyes and you are really looking, you're going to just sit there and fantasize. It's just neurology here. But you see, beloved, once you get used to gazing, then it makes no difference, does it?
Right.
Because you're gazing with eyes open, you're gazing with eyes closed. Therefore, the experience is not different. And even when you gaze with eyes wide open into the light, if you gaze into the darkness, it will be no different with the light on, with the light off with eyes open, or with the eyes closed. No difference. The gazing remains the same, uninterrupted. But the most immediate benefit you get is that you will experience more peace. Did anybody start feeling a little bit more peaceful in the back? Because you had better darkness back there. Y'all had, on that end, did this light in the kitchen distract you? You didn't have no distraction.
Well,
So
light in the kitchen kind of distracted.
a little bit, yeah, keep it hit your peripheral. Yeah. How about those facing the wall with the light reflecting off of the window? So you had good darkness?
I had light.
You had a little bit right there?
I noticed, because I had light from the shades.
From the shades
showing
right
on the
here.
wall, but at times it would just sort of disappear.
Yeah, when you gaze.
Right.
If
It
you
would disappear.
picked it up in your peripheral, it distract you. But if you gaze, it disappears.
It disappeared.
Out of the field of view.
It was
Right.
just totally black.
Just totally black, absolutely. What about Bilal? What about you and Savrad? Were you all dark enough here?
No,
Black
I had it
enough?
on the side.
It was not.
There was
Same.
some light from the...
Yeah, from there. So, but when you get home, you can correct all of that. But if you had that kind of absolute darkness, you would kind of be re-entering into peace. See, the peace you're looking for, that's where it exists. Peace exists when you're doing nothing. See, you're trying to find peace on the run. You think peace is a doing. Peace is a non-doing. You see. Now, what are you doing when you go to bed at night and enter into supsupti? Are you doing anything? And that's why you get rest. You're trying to do something restful or do something to produce peace. But that's the wrong approach to having peace. You do nothing. You be still. More importantly, you enter into the darkness. So when you enter into that darkness, that blackness, that divine blackness, you come into a state of profound hotel. Peace. It's just natural. There's nothing mysterious about it. It's just so very natural.
Yeah.
Just beloved.
Yeah, I want to say an experience that I had last week in which I was at the house. It just seemed like my queen was just giving me hell, you know, just hell, just, you know, every minute just something. So
That sounds like a familiar story.
She spent a lot of time upstairs watching TV, rather than, you know, my daughter. So I found a lot of times there's been no moments that I would retreat downstairs, and when I got so depressed, one day I just couldn't sit up in the kitchen with the light on. I just cut it off. Just sat there and it was just so peaceful. It alleviated me, and they even came downstairs to investigate. First, you know, my daughter came like, what is he doing?
Yes.
So I'm just in the dark, and she didn't say nothing. She just went right upstairs. She must have told my queen that she come down.
Were you holding a knife?
I know for a fact, and Lord, you know, the pressure, because last week she was just giving me all hell.
Yes. Yes.
I just found myself want to spend my
absolutely,
time.
Absolutely. In fact, that's a key. Like when you find, for instance, in the moment, there's anger rising. Okay, fine. Visualize the darkness. You don't even have to go downstairs and cut the light off. You see, enter into that blackness, and the anger dissipates. It can't exist. You see, the energy from anger is withdrawn. The thinking about the incident, enumerating about it, you know, lamenting it. You see, why she shouldn't be like this, why she doing things. All of that is what generates it, depression. But when you enter into this blackness, you see, TPM diminishes, drops. You see, you're thinking about what you're seeing, but you're not seeing nothing. You follow me? So even if you sit in the darkness thinking about the darkness, how much thinking can you do? And if that is being reduced, diminished, then so is your emotional responses to your thinking. That also get diminished. And even the bodily responses to your emotion get diminished. Because if you have an anger, your body is also having anger, right? You feel it, something going on, you see. And when you're angry in the mind, you're always discomfortable in the body. They go together. If you're angry in the mind, you are by definition going to be discomfortable in the body automatically. So soon, some shit is hurting on you. God damn, my feet hurt. But you don't know why. You know what I mean? I guess I go to doctor. No, you just getting angry too much. You done broke your damn ankle getting angry. I feel like you done failed. Ooh, my leg is... Yeah, well,
I get a hip replacement.
Oh, yeah. Most people, you know, you store that anger in the legs, the shoulders. You know, even where you're hurting it in the body tells you which emotion you're having trouble with. It's profound. It's profound. In acupuncture, you know, they're able to identify where the blocks are, and they just, you know, open up those nadis. But it's no great mystery here. So in entering into this darkness, it's medicinal. That's why meditation, medicine, they have the same root. It's a healing experience. And when you are absolutely quiet in absolute darkness, eyes open, one with the blackness, entered into it, you see, you heal. Some scotters and all that stuff heals. It's healing. It heals you. It really heals you. And it's once you develop a taste for it, once you get the taste of it, just one taste of it, it just, you know, it's just something, it's a place you'd rather be all the time. It's really a preferred state of being, you know. You'd rather not do anything else. It's a very peaceful experience, with eyes wide open. You can have the experience of susupti. That's what meditation is. That's what the meditated condition is. It's peace. That's how you know you're doing it right. Because there's an increase of peace, calmness, awareness. You see, if you're meditating and you're getting sleepier, well, obviously, you see, there's some adjustments you need to make. You see. If you're sitting and you're meditating, and the longer you sit there to meditate, the more agitated you're becoming, then probably you need to make some adjustment, because it's just the opposite. Even sitting here, the longer you sit here quietly with the eyes open, looking at the darkness, the calmer you became, didn't you? Was that most of you all experienced? At first it started off a little rocky. You know, you got to get your seat, get your gravity, find the right posture, the most comfortable, get out of, you know, all of that, right? Eyes are, you know, burning a little bit, but you're getting used to it, you know, just in this short period of time, you know. But after about 15, 20 minutes, you start getting a hit, a wave of peace will hit you, and then it'll go away, a wave of peace will hit will come, it's waving in, you know. If you could sit longer, you know. And some traditions that really ground their practice primarily in this technique. Usually it's about 10 to 12 hours. You sit through the night. The Sufis were famous for this. This is a very popular form of Sufi practice. In fact, the Sufis, when a rainy, moonless night was not present, what the Sufi had did, they had dug holes in the ground, you know, because some places didn't have caves, so they dug holes in the ground. And the Sufi would get down in them holes, you know what I mean, and pull that thing closed, and they'd sit in that hole, you see. And they would sit all night long, you see. Beautiful. Some of the desert fathers would do the same. You know what I mean? Beautiful. So this practice then, you know, has this variation dependent upon the spiritual traditions that are out there. But I know in Sufism it's a part of a lot of the Sufi traditions. Just this sitting quietly. In the darkness. Meditating, maintaining your awareness of the darkness, maintaining the awareness of the darkness, maintaining your awareness of the darkness. Mind drifts out, you again recover your awareness of the darkness. You will lose your awareness of the darkness, and the mind will be in a reverie. Then you recover your awareness of the darkness, and it's that kind of a thing until slowly but surely this awareness of the darkness remains unbroken. It's almost like what you experience when you drift off to sleep, you know, for a moment that you can feel yourself going in and out, and then sort of you into it, you know what I mean? But it's a kind of gradual falling into the susupti, you know? Gradually, I mean, it's like a fading out of the outside world, and then you cross over, you go. But this is like something like that, you know? And then you abide in that condition. And the most material level of the practice is when you open eyes, find blackness, enter into that blackness, thus false disappear. That's so profound. It's such a beautiful sutra. You see, I can do the poetry part of it, you know, but we don't have enough time tonight because, you know, it's very beautiful. I wanted to give you one other little one. Would that be all right? Do we have time?
Yes.
I don't want to take up too much time because we want our wives and husbands and everybody else to permit us to get together like this every month. And if we mess this up, I stayed here all night. None of us are going to be permitted to get back out here. And we'll kind of just set this up, and we'll perhaps talk more about it next time we get together here at home. Because it too kinds of relates to this. Because one of the things that you experience as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into this blackness, as you enter deeper into the blackness, to the degree that you enter the blackness, to the degree your ego drops. And that is the source of the peace, you see. As you're entering into this blackness with awareness, becoming more and more and more aware of the blackness itself, you lose more and more awareness of you. It is an ego diminishing experience, hence the peace. And there is an additional tantra technique that Lord Shiva gave as a gift to his beloved consort, Shakti, for the sake of her enlightenment, that I want you to at least begin to consider. And you may want to take a note of this. I'm not going to mess up a perfectly good board. Before desire and before knowing, how or what can I say I am? Consider and dissolve in the beauty. I have loved this sutra, you see, almost as much as the Sutra of Blackness. It's so profound. The language is a little cryptic, it's a little archaic, but nevertheless, it speaks directly to the problem of problems, which is ego. There may be differences among different paths and religions and so forth, but almost all of them, without exception, are agreeing on one thing: you must transcend the ego. Buddha agrees that this must be done. Mahavira, Lao Tzu, Jesus, Muhammad, you see. Every sage and saint, irrespective of their particular path, all are in agreement on that. There may be variant on other themes, but this one thing they agree on. The ego is simply the problem, and the ego must be transcended. In this sutra, you see, Mahadeva gives to Shakti insight and a kind of understanding. When grasped, disappears the ego altogether. It's one of those kind of Ananda Sutras, where the understanding is the technique. You see? It's not a doing. You see? It's not a practice. You see? This entering into the blackness is a kind of Jhana Sutra. It's a practice. You must practice this. You must practice, set aside some time. You must practice this. This sutra, it's not a sutra you have to set aside time and practice per se. it must be understood. And that very understanding is the technique. So it takes a little bit to appreciate it before desire and before knowing how can I say what I am. Consider and dissolve into the beauty. What Mahadev is saying here is that who you feel you are is a epiphenomenon. It comes after a fact. Before knowing something, how can you see, say I am? Before anger, how can you say I'm angry? Before thinking, how can you say I am my thought? I mean, before thinking, how can you say I'm unhappy? Something occurs before ego. How can you identify as being something before that something happens? Normally we're thinking just the reverse. You see? Just the reverse. You think the ego is something that exists independent of phenomena. No. Ego is the reaction, a byproduct of phenomena. It doesn't precede it. See, this is very deep. Before you were angry, before there was anger, how could you say I'm angry? Because when you say I am angry, what has happened there? Identification, right? Mm-hmm. How can you become identified with that which don't exist? Something has to exist first for you to become identified with it, to become an ego. Look at Mukherjee. And you drunk, is she drinking Roger Beer again? And she back? Is that about right? Prior to your egoic experience, there must be identification with something. And ordinarily, you see, that is a desire or a knowing. Is that about right? Because you become identified with your desire. A desire arises, and you become identified with it. I want this. I mean, you become identified. And when you really consider this closely, consider. Mahadeva says, consider. I love that. That's where I stole the term consider. I loved it. I loved it. It just flew. I loved that, you know. Mahadeva says, consider the fact that ego is pure consciousness identifying with something. And unless there is something there to identify with, there cannot be any ego. Hence, how can I say what I am before desiring, before knowing? How can I say what I am? Well, consider, you can't say that you're anything. All you can say is, I am. And that's it. Is that right? Because how can I say what I am before there is something to identify with? Yet I am before that I become identified with. But that I am that precedes the identification with that which arises is not ego. Ego is that which arises upon identification with that which is arising. Are you with me?
Yeah.
And when you have entered into that blackness that we talked about earlier, there is nothing arising to identify with. Even Bharati, there's nothing arising to identify with. If you can become still, quiet, only aware of the blackness and entered into that blackness, enter into your own inherent blackness. If you can do that, then you will not be in your memory. Ego is the identification with the past. It is the identification with a memory. Isn't it? Yeah. But entered in deeply into that blackness, there is no remembering of the past going on. So how in that moment, in that blackness, can you say what you are? Consider it and dissolve into the beauty. Right? Dissolve into the beauty. It's like fall into Hotep. Dissolve into the beauty of that. So this is a profound sutra, and it follows naturally upon the heels of success and from the practice of the previous tantra. It comes as an automatic discovery, because it's only when you leave the darkness that you become identified with that which did not even exist in the darkness. So in that darkness, how can I say what I am? How can I limit myself? Okay. See, when you say I am this or I'm that, you have limited yourself. You have limited the infinite. Is that about right? I am this emotion. I am this concept, I am this memory. All that is a limitation. You demystify your own inherent mysterious being. And consider it. How wonderful it is to be liberated from being who you think you are. Oh, that shit is depressing. If you really are who you think you are, you have some serious trouble. It's depressing. You know? It's a hallucination. It's a bad dream. You see?
That I can't wake up from.
You know how you had these bad dreams, these nightmares, and you're terrified, and you wake up and you say, man, I'm glad, right? I'm glad I was only dreaming. It's like that. So what David is saying is that this understanding wakes you up from the dream, the nightmare, the illusion, and delusion of being who you think you are. And upon that awakening, dissolve into the beauty of that. Man, I'm glad I'm not who I think I am. Oh man, I'm so glad I'm not who I thought I was. Oh man, I'm so happy. You see? And you dissolve into that happiness. Because you ask the worst thing that could have befallen you is that you really had become that which you were thinking you were. That is the worst fate that can befall the soul and think, God, I am not who I thought I was. I am not who I think I am. Because who you've been thinking you are is hell. It's created hell for you. You're trying to maintain an illusion. You will fail by definition. You have been going through pure hell trying to be something that you're not, thinking that that's who you are. Before desire, desiring to be a certain way, who can you say you are? Before the desire to be a certain way, before the concept of who you think you are, before that arises, how can you say you are that? Before knowing, before your conditioning, how can I say what I know? Consider. And you will know if your consideration has been profound, because if it has been profound, you will dissolve into beauty. Your life will dissolve from its horror that it is presently. It will dissolve into beauty. All that horror and misery that you are calling your life, all that is wrong in your life, all that is hurting you in your life, all that is breaking your heart in your life, all of that dissolves into the beauty of who you really are. And I have loved this sutra. Because it epitomizes exactly what occurs when our practice of opening the third eye has been achieved. That's what you see. The saints say that if you can only see with your two eyes, you're not seeing things. They said without the third eye, you can't see anything. You can't see this. You can't see that before desire and before knowing, you are not. Ego is not. Does that make sense to you? So that's enough for that right now. So that's something for you to play with till next month. Perhaps we'll get together and we'll go into it a little bit more. But do understand that your very sense of yourself that you are having right now is based on your identification with some past experience, some memory. And you see, you think these memories are all connected, you see. One thing more that you have to understand. In psychology, we have a concept called entrainment. And in entrainment, what happens is that we make a false connection between events that have no logical connection whatsoever. And we link them together. And then we come to a conclusion about life others and ourselves on the basis of that false connection. Okay, it's entrained. Let me give you an idea of what the saints mean when they say that you have become identified with certain memories. And so let's look at these experiences that we have. And let's say that this experience is the experience of suffering. Some experience happened. And here's the experience of something that was pleasant. And let's say here you had another experience of depression. And here you had an experience of anger. Here you had another experience that produced attachment, so forth and so on. All of these experiences are separate and distinct experiences, right? Now, they also become our memories as well. Our memory is made up of all of these discrete, unconnected experiences that we had. Here's another moment of suffering here. Well, this moment that you suffer came from an entirely different discrete experience than this one. This moment of suffering didn't have shit to do with this moment of suffering, right? And this moment of anger had nothing to do with this moment of anger here. Now, what we tend to do is that in the act of memory, we focus in on memorizing just certain things. We make a file. Here's suffering. And we put them all in the same file, right? We link these things together. And then we come to a conclusion about ourselves. I am suffering. Yeah. But it's only because you are not remembering the past clearly. You have factored out those moments. You had joy here, you had pleasure here, you had happiness here. You're just focusing on remembering certain things that cause you suffering. And usually because those are the things that didn't go the way you what? Right. You see. So now, because that's what you remember, you made that file, right? And you have linked all of these experiences of things when they didn't go your way, put them all in this file, and then you remember that, and that's what you say, I am. I am always suffering. It's not true. You follow me? At all. It's something like this, not quite. I'm not going to really unpack this very much. We'll save that for a future occasion. But I wanted to somehow dramatize the profound nature of that sutra. Its implications. That before this knowing, this memory, memorization, before remembering your past, how and what can you say you are? Before remembering my past, how can I say who or what I am? If you didn't remember your past, how can you say who you think you are now? Consider it. Consider it. What would happen to your sense of self, your ego? Will it exist if you cease remembering your past? Consider it. Consider it. And dissolve into the beauty of being liberated from your past. And it's a misidentification with your past at that, isn't it? Yeah. It's a false recollection of your past. You're not even clear about your own past life. It's a distortion, isn't it? Where you have connected only those moments, you see, that are similar, and eliminated the rest of it. Nobody's life has been full of all pure suffering. No. Nobody. And nobody's life is full of all pure joy. Yes, beloved.
When you make that linkage, it's always to the end of the suffering. You never remember why it happened.
Absolutely.
You just remember the end part of it.
Only the piece of it. That's right. And you attribute all suffering to the same thing. They're always doing the same thing to me. They call me. Right. No, different shit. It ain't the same thing. See, this person did that. This person did this, and they were not connected. No connection. Discrete. Non-connected. Illogical phenomena. Experience does not flow logically. Your next experience that you have will not logically be based on the prior experience that you had. There are no logical connections between experiences. We impose the logic on it, but they're not logical. Are they? So this way that we have memorized our life is almost always distorted. And remember, some people only connect the pleasant things. And that's also distorted. They say, I'm a happy-go-lucky person. Nothing ever wrong bad happened to me. Not true. Some bad shit has happened to you. You just don't remember. You selectively select it out of your memory. Yes, beloved.
You know, it's amazing that you say that, Master, because this is where psychiatry and psychology truly fails us. Because it makes that connection. I know particularly in my job, it makes that connection and then it labels it. It gives it a disorder. And then you live according to that disorder when you're talking about totally separate, different, you know what I mean, distinct experiences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally. Unconnected. Unrelated. Distinct. Arise, disappears. And you become identified with certain memories that you're holding. Your sense of self, your ego, is nothing but your identification with a certain set of memories, selected out of vast experiences that you've had. And that's all it is. And before memorizing your past, how can you say what you are? And then look what you remember. Most of what you remember about your past ain't true. You tend to remember your past the way you wanted it to be, not how it actually was. Just see that. Set two people in the room, me and Bilal, we can reminisce, you and Barani Rock reminisce, you and Roger Vitta can reminisce about the same year, 1963, what happened at the kitchen table over Pearl House, and y'all had three different memories of that shit.
That's right.
Right? You remember the event the way you want to remember, 'cause you didn't eat the last biscuit. That's right. Roger Vitta remember that you ate the last biscuit and took all the syrup as well. You will always remember the past the way you want to remember it. You will remember the past in a way that is consistent with your ego.
God, that's scary.
So that way, Master,
You maintain it.
If I have colored myself as a victim, everything that's happened to me, I will see myself as a victim of what happened. No matter when I even when I took advantage of somebody else, I'll still say, well, I did it for a reason because they had victimized me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly what happens. That's That's exactly what happens. You see. Exactly what happens. Just like that. And no matter what other people do, you will always reduce it to victimization. Always. Because you have linked it, you have connected it, you have entrained it, you have created a samskara. You have distorted the truth. Yeah. Right? You egotize everything on the basis of that. Nobody's never done nothing for me. That's not true. That's absolutely flat out not true. In fact, if you look at the record, probably people that done more shit for you than not for you. By a long shot. But you only remember the few 15 times when you asked somebody and they said no. Now you have turned that 15 out of 1 million into a statement. Don't nobody ever do shit for me. And you create all kind of suffering for me.
That's right. That's right. That's true.
You turn those 1 or 2 times that somebody that you encounter who really didn't like you and didn't invite you to the party. That's true. That did happen. But you done turned those little 5 times into a monumental statement that nobody likes me. That ain't true. That's not true. It is distorting of the past for the sake of maintaining a certain image of yourself. And that's all that about. Consider. And as you move deep into your blackness, when you get into your blackness, you will be liberated from all this. And there is no need in that moment to be anybody. It's a profound matter. Before the desire and before knowing, how can I say what I am? Consider. And dissolve into the beauty. Something else to say about it, beloved? These are great sutras, these are great techniques. The Vijnana Bevrava Tantras have been practiced for thousands of years and have guided countless beings to that state of Muska and liberation from Maya. And they remain as potent today as they were then. And so they will certainly serve you in your efforts to be liberated as well. But they must be engaged with some degree of integrity. So if you are going to do your 30 days or so, then do it. Simple. Don't make a lot of melodrama out of it. Don't make cases for it. Don't go into all of that stuff. Just do it. And then you will see for yourself. And then, we will gather next month maybe. Would that be all right? Would you like to do that?
Yeah,
and we have a group cooler process and you all get to share and see. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Mahadeva word for it. Don't take Lord Shiva's word for it. You know what I mean? Go see for yourself. See what happens. Yes, beloved.
So, Master, if we really get into the darkness and get into that sutra that you just said, then we should see that life force.
The life force?
The light force, the force of energy, the life force.
See it?
Or feel it.
Feel it? Yes, yes. I'm not sure what
Of
that means.
all sentient, all the sentinel beings. That if we drop and we're just, is.
You too deep for me. Girl, way too deep for me. It's on my heart. You didn't used to be this deep. How you getting so deep? I'm used to you asked an easy, simple question. I guess this cooler process pays off, huh? That's a profound thing. But I suppose there's a sutra. There's a sutra for that. We'll read it next time. Maybe I'll find it. There's a kind of tantra by doing which you have the experience of oneness. There's a real tantra for that. But it's one of the dangerous ones in the Vijayana Bhairava Sutra. It's one of the dangerous. Some of those techniques, some of those tantras should only be done under the supervision, a close and direct supervision of the Guru, because otherwise they're very dangerous. That's one of the downsides from the mass translation of those sutras. They are falling into the hands of so many people, and they are not able to recognize and discriminate between which of the tantras require or do not require the direct supervision of the Guru, you see. But there are some, a few, not many, but there are a few in the collection that require direct supervision. And one of the 112 sutras requiring such supervision is that tantra, whereby you are able to now absorb the whole of space into your mind and have the experience of oneness. But it is a very sophisticated tantra and technique, must be guided, because there's every possibility that if not guided, you will lose your mental balance. And one of the proponents of that sutra, that tantra, that technology, in fact, he was a spiritual teacher, and he made that particular sutra the foundation of his approach. But he himself had not really submitted to the guidance in that process, and he committed suicide. You all remember one of the people from Adidam came to Satsang, and she was a follower of Rama up in New York, and he committed suicide. Same thing, you see. So you have to be very, very cautious about that. So we will talk a little bit about that. We may save that for the last one. What do you think, Aladapsa? Because don't you killing yourself before you go to Egypt. I want you to go to Egypt, then you can kill yourself. And you can kill yourself after this. But certainly you will come alive. That's what Jesus meant when he said, I give you life and I give it to you more abundantly, you see. Because as you retrieve more of this energy that is dissipated through the eyes, ears, and other physical senses, when you're able to enter into that blackness, that energy, that moon, as you are able to move deeper into that, you become more conscious. So naturally, therefore, you become more alive as well. More alive, more throbbing. Life become more celebratory, you see. It's magnified, you see. More sensitive too as well, you see. And it is this increase in sensitivity now that heightens and alters your connection to others. You're more sensitive, more perceptive, you see. You're able to penetrate deeper into people, Hence, there's a increased feeling of connectedness, you see, because you have grown so much in that. So this one practice of entering into the black brings about all of those kind of things that we normally associate with the enlightened being, the compassion, all of that. Because again, you can't be compassionate if you are only capable of emotionally responding to others. Please make a note. How would you be compassionate to others? You see, you're not calm enough emotionally and mentally to be compassionate. So even when you're trying to be compassionate, you're being violent. Why? Because you're trying to change what you are doing, thinking that that is changing who you are. They are not the same. Changing what you are doing and how you are doing is not changing you. Vast difference. Now, it's necessary to, no doubt, these outward things, changes and doing that we do, they have a role, but we must never substitute changing what we do for transformation, ever. So without having really come into a profound state of calmness as a result of entering into this blackness, then your compassion is forced. It is practiced. You see, you are being violently compassionate. You see. Your compassion hurts others. You were trying to be compassionate, but oops, I hurt you, motherfucker. It was an accident. I'm terrible. I'm no good, guy. But I'm just right for you. Perfect. I accidentally hurt you. I was trying to be compassionate.
That's what I was trying to say. I didn't say it in the,
I got
terminology. That's to the point.
Yeah, you see. Because you are not different. You're trying to do something different.
Right.
And you are doing something different.
Right.
But that something different that you're doing will still be infused by you. It will still reflect you. You will still, you see, be in it. So if you are nonviolent, and then you want to practice the sila of nonviolence, you see, ahimsa. But rather than making that transformation at the level of being, you start changing outward things. And even those moments when you are trying to be kind to others, you will still be hurting them because there's something of your violence will seep through and then contaminate even the good things that you do. So these techniques then, you see, beloved, are aimed to transform you at the level of your being. They are not morality practices. They are not practices of ethics. They are practices that are purposed to transform your inner being. There are therefore two types of seekers that normally come to the path. Those are seeking what to do, and those seeking what to be. The two are somehow, what's wrong with that? That's your sister-in-law by right. I'm holding you responsible for it. Don't let her drive home. She's having all kinds of clicks here. You clicking all over back there. Now, at some level, yes, it's important with, You need to know what to do. Sure. So the Guru will oftentimes tell you what to do. Do this, do this, do that, do this, do that. But don't get that confused with what to be. You see, what you are trying to do should be related to what you're trying to be. You follow me? But there must be this, what you're trying to be. Meditation is about what you're trying to be. These sutras, these tantras are about what you're trying to be, as opposed to what you're trying to do. And it is a vast distinction, very subtle, very subtle. But you must enjoy that, you see. So sitting in this darkness, you see, quietly, or sitting in the darkness at the formal time of practice, doesn't matter. You see. It's about being. It's about being more, not doing more. It's about being more, not knowing more information. It's about being. It's about moving through the layers of your being. So many things. I mean, we could stay here literally all night and go Sufi here. I mean, I have not even scratched the surface of the profundity of these sutras. I'm not even close. But one of the experiences that you will have as you enter into that blackness, it's a journey. It's really a journey. It's a spiritual journey. There's a movement. You see? As you get still and you get quiet, a kind of mystical transport begins to occur. Now, it's really interesting in Kemetic mysticism. You'll see when we go to Egypt, you're going to see in the Pyramid of Yunus, the pyramid text, you're going to see a depiction of this journey into the blackness. You see, by Osiris entering into the Duat, he emerges hoarse. There's the transformation. He enters into the blackness, you see. As you enter into this blackness, there's a metamorphosis that occurs. Very similar to the metamorphosis that occurs within the cocoon. You know, something dies and come out different. There's a journey, there's a movement, there's travel involved in the process. Just sitting here in this darkness very quietly. You see, if you did it Sufi-like and sit here for 12 hours, you could appreciate my argument better, because it's a journey. How far can you go in that journey, that inner journey into darkness, in a half an hour? You can't go very far, you see? And if you stop and start tomorrow and you sit another half an hour, well, you only go as far as you were previous day, and etc. So you have to go deeper. As you move deeper into this journey, into the blackness, inside, into your inner being, you go beyond the physical self, the Annamaya culture. Sitting in that darkness, your experience of just being identified with the body disappears. But you must be still. And just like there's a burning in the eyes as you enter into the darkness, and the darkness enter into you, similarly at the lower of the body, there's a discomfort. True. But you have to be, vigilant. And you pass through it, just like the eyes after a certain point will stop burning and stop tearing. Similarly, at a point as you inhere and abide in that darkness, you'll go past the Annamaya kosha, the body, and that drops out. And in the darkness now, you see, there's the experience of being bodiless. You persist and you abide in the darkness a little bit longer. Then the pranamaya kosha, the emotional body, drops out. And you have come that much closer to your being, you see. And so forth and so on. You see. The manamaya kosha, the vijanamaya kosha, and the anandamaya kosha drops, and then Atman. You see? You have gone that same route as our ancestors, from Osiris to Horus, the resurrection. Died Osiris, roses horse. That's why the teaching that you will see on the pyramid text are the teachings of the Shemsu Horus, the disciples and followers of Horus. They're not just funerary texts, as your Orthodox Egyptologists will have you believe. That's a depiction of that inner journey in this blackness. It's beautiful. It is the pratyabhijna of the Chava tradition. It is the recovery of the experience of yourself. And this little outward practice, just remember, is puja, helps. So you all do it as puja, right? And spend more time sitting in your meditation. That's where it's at. So it's a very, very, very beautiful thing. And you will find, you see, Aladasa, that you will just get all of these things. The compassionate kind of thing that you want, the feeling of oneness, to be loving and all of that. All of your spiritual goals and ambitions will be fulfilled. You will simply become capable of that. And note that you will simply become capable of it. You won't even have to practice it. It will just arise naturally. It'll be second nature. You won't have to discipline yourself. You see, you will become love. So if you become love, how do you have to practice being loving? You become compassionate. You don't have to practice being compassionate when you have become compassion. Does that make sense? The Buddha wasn't practicing karana. You know what I mean? He wasn't practicing compassion. He was compassion. You see, Jesus wasn't practicing mercy. He was the incarnation of mercy. There was no practicing involved. Is that about right? And this is the way you get it. Beautiful? Yeah. All right, rascal, y'all tired and sleepy, and that's good.
We're
all right, who wants the last word? Then we got to go. Anything else about it? Have we said enough about it? No, you don't get no last word, Sakyani. I said last. You don't know what that means. I'll use you on the opening. No close. I'll let you start talking. We'll be here 2 years. We love it. We love it. Shake them out. Now go home and practice it. So let's all that are in the room, let's all come back. As many of us who can come back next month, this same time, and then let's share the experiences with one another, right? Okay. 30 days, 30 minutes in the morning. If you're going to do it for puja, if not, then maybe somewhere throughout the day, give yourself 30 to 45 minutes. A few people are here that you start running. You all a few weeks here. That'll be all right. Y'all have more time to practice, so that'll be good. And then we'll have a grand cooler meeting. Will be good enough?
Is anybody staying here tonight? Anybody? Then y'all go right home because I got to lock up.